Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the Monday show with me, Andrew Musgrove, and Newcastle United editor Aaron Stokes. Coming up on this week's show, we take a look at the signing of Lloyd Kelly and why it really could be a masterstroke for Newcastle United. We have a look at the interest in Michael Olise and why, even if he doesn't sign for Newcastle, the owners have got one very small win out of that interest. We'll take your questions and then round off with a little look at some cheaper championship alternatives that could help Newcastle build up their squad for next season. This is the Everything's Black and White podcast. Please hit follow, like, subscribe, leave us a rating and review. Let's get on with the show. Aaron, you well?
Very well. It feels like maybe it's because the season isn't on and we've got no Newcastle United matches to talk about. It feels like a long time since we've done a Monday show, and I'm pretty sure we did one last week.
We literally did one 7 days ago.
That just proves how much I've been missing the show, and I hope the listeners and viewers have been as well.
There's plenty to talk about Newcastle United-wise, but also, I want to update the listeners on the podcast battle. I've got podcast on the brain. The park run battle, rather. Now, admittedly, I didn't do it this Saturday.
Again, what was your excuse this time?
I just couldn't be bothered, quite frankly. But you did it, and you had to move from your usual one to a new one, and you didn't like it very much, did you?
I didn't like it. My hamstring certainly didn't like it.
Shall I read out the text that you sent me here? You said, word of warning, so I thought I'd done something wrong. Never do Jesmond Park run. 30 minutes it took me. It's so hilly. My knees and ankles are in bits. So you wouldn't recommend it?
Well, I think I've done myself a little bit of a disservice. I think my time was 30 minutes, 30 seconds, which is slow by my going, but I did 5.3 or 5.4K. So I'm adding a little bit of time on, but what? If anybody's a runner listening to this or watching this live, and you're thinking about doing a park run, unless you're an absolute elite runner, don't do Jesmond Park run.
I've got to say that doing more than 5 kilometers is more than you usually do, because you're one at the time where it was never 5 kilometers.
It's always
ever.
4.7, 4.8. But yeah, the hamstrings are a bit sore, but I'm ready to go. I'm here, and let's get on with it.
Well, we're back from London as well. We went down to London midweek, and we didn't win the award for Best Sport Podcast. So we've conceded our crown, and we lost to the Claret and Blue podcast, the Villa Alternative. Now, I'm good friends with Dan, who runs that. He is practically me in the Midlands, so I'm all for him picking up that award. I'm not bitter at all about it. And he's been on holiday the last couple of weeks, and I've helped him out. I've recorded a podcast with him before he went away, so he had some content going out. It was about helping Aston Villa fans prepare for the Champions League experience. And it turns out that they do not like me very much at all. Now, interestingly, Dan started by saying we used to have this weird rivalry, didn't we? Aston Villa, Newcastle, sub on the time. We both agreed it was a load of rubbish. I mean, I was all for it back in the day, but as time's gone on and I've got older, I'm not for it. But I do feel I might have stoked it back up, because the amount of abuse I've got in the comments for basically just saying, first off, if Newcastle hadn't had the injuries and suspension to Tonali, I think they could have caught Villa in fourth, which I still believe and still 100% believe could have happened. But I also praised you and I and said, if there's one team I would have wanted to get fourth ahead of Newcastle, if it couldn't be Newcastle, it would have been Villa. They've missed that bit out. Just stuck to the first 5 minutes of me saying Newcastle could have caught them. And goodness me, the abuse in the comments, I've never seen anything like it.
I think that statement will get a lot warmer responses on this podcast, talking it here among Newcastle fans, than it would have on the Villa podcast. I think there's a time and place to be airing those.
Well, I just thought I had to be honest. Let me know in the comments if you're watching live. Do you think Newcastle could have pipped Villa at the fourth if they had their full squad at their disposal? Not that it matters anymore. Baz Down Under asks, are you wearing a cardigan? This is not a cardigan. This is just a very light shirt. But thank you, Baz, for that. Anyway, enough of what we've been talking about. Let's get on with the football. We'll talk about Lloyd Kelly first and foremost. The worst kept secret when it comes to Newcastle United transfer news. Finally signed on a free transfer. Rise from Bournemouth after nearly 6 years on the South Coast. I am a little bit surprised that this hasn't universally been recognised as a good deal for Newcastle. There are some fans who are not overly pleased by it. No. I mean, there's one reason people aren't pleased about it, and I was going to talk about it later, but I'll talk about it now. It is the injury concerns.
See, now I thought you were going to say because it's not the brand spanking shiny,
it's not.
Big name, big money signing that.
But I'd like to think the majority can look past that and look at Eddie Howe wanting them, the transfer team, doing the reports on them, chasing them and wanting them. I don't think it always has to be a brand spanking big name. So I'd like to think fans can look past that.
Well, let's start with the positives then. Let's not dive straight into the negatives in the injury record. It is a good sign.
It's a
Of course,
fantastic
it's a
signing.
brilliant sign, and I think the majority of people that are listening or watching to this right now will agree. I think, as I think it was John Gibson last week said on one of the podcasts, it ticks a lot of boxes. Centre back was their priority. It was the one position they had to get bodies in through the door this summer. They've done that nice and early before the windows opened. A player that Eddie Howe knows very, very well. He's tried for years at Newcastle United to sign players at Bournemouth that he's worked with before. Nathan Ake, Dan Juma, Billin, Solanke. He's finally got one through the door. Versatile, can play centre back, left back, and it's a free. It ticks so many boxes. And yes, we're going to talk about the injuries and maybe the slight negative, but I think on the face of it, a really, really good start of the window.
He's young, so he's got his best years ahead of him. And if he can overcome the injury problems, which I do accept, there's quite a few of them. And I've got the days written down here that he's missed while being at Bournemouth. So he signed 2019-20 in the May from Bristol. His first season, he missed the majority of it, only playing 9 games in all competitions. He missed 278 days through injury. 2021 he's missed 42, 21-22 he missed 26, 22-23 he missed 150 days, 23-24 he missed 91 days. So on those numbers I can understand the skepticism, but given how important of a signing this is, and I know it's on a free transfer, so they've not lost any money in terms of transfer spend, but you would think probably sign on fee. The wage will be closer to £100,000 a week than it is £50,000 a week. You would assume it's still a big outlay, and it's a priority position. Newcastle United are not going to have signed him just on a whim. They would of course done the medical. We saw the pictures of him getting a medical in London. This will be a thorough medical, and of course you can never be certain. There's no guarantee. But they will be more confident than not that he's overcome the injury problems over the last couple of years.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, look, some of the skepticism from some, I'd say a minor section of Newcastle fans, is probably because you've got this player who's coming in with a poor injury record, and he's actually coming into a team that suffered more injuries than we've ever seen anywhere last season. Look, as you said, the medical team will have done their job. I think there's no doubt in that when he's fit and round to go, he's a fantastic player. You've only got to look at some of the teams that have been linked with him. You've only got to look at the reaction to the Bournemouth fans, who have all said the same thing, that they're losing a really good servant who will really improve Newcastle. Yes, we do need to keep our fingers crossed a little bit that he's overcome these injuries. I mean, you put it in days there just to sort of change it slightly and put it into games missed. He missed 17 games with 3 separate injuries last season. He missed 18 games the season before. The season before that, he missed 4. So he's missing games the last 3 seasons. But there seem to be short, sharp injuries a couple of times a season. I mean, the last season alone, calf injury in September, muscle injury in December, and a hip injury in February, and all 3 kept him out for around a month.
It's those muscle injuries which I think will concern people the most, because Newcastle have already picked up quite a few of them in the last couple of seasons, and there's always questions. And I don't subscribe to the theory that maybe the way how players and sets up leads players to those injuries, which I don't think is necessarily true. But I can understand why there is a little bit of concern that a player who picks up these amount of injuries, especially muscle ones, is coming to a club where his new teammates do tend to pick up the same injuries.
Yeah, and it's not just that it's one injury that's recurring. I mean, 4 or 5 different injuries out of the last 5 or 6 times he's been out. It does, have a little cause of concern. I actually think it poses a question as well, as to whether Newcastle need to go out and get another centre-back. We know that they were in for Toon. Obviously, a big part of that would have been the fact that him and Kelly were both on a free. Do they need to go out and get somebody else, a young centre-back? Because Fabian Schär's getting no younger, Dan Burn is getting no younger, Sven Botman and Jamal Lascelles obviously aren't going to be fit for the start of the season. Do you think they've got enough there?
I think in an ideal world, you would go out and get another centre-back. We were all for Toon before he decided to join Chelsea. I don't necessarily see a reason for why the plans would have changed. If Newcastle felt they needed to before, then they probably need to go out and get another now after Kelly's arrival. It's just about getting that budget, because obviously Toon coming in, you're not paying 30-40 million for a centre-back. Again, you're probably paying quite a hefty sign-on fee, but nowhere near the amount of money you will have to pay to buy someone. Now, you've mentioned there the return of Lascelles and Bottom towards the end of this year, hopefully October, November time. So, you bring someone in, you're going to have a lot of competition. Could you turn to Alex Murphy until Botman comes back and say, here's your chance? You've still got Dan Byrne as well. Lloyd Kelly coming in now. Kraft. Have they got enough to get themselves through? I mean, look, you want to keep improving. There's definitely scope, I think, to go out and get a top-class centre-back. But does the budget stretch to it enough that it doesn't affect other plans around the team, which are a bigger priority?
Well, I think that hits the nail on the head, because I do think they have enough, as you've mentioned there. Alex Murphy gave a great interview to the Irish Independent last week where he said, I was a little bit taken aback by the standard at Newcastle when I joined the first team, but now I've had a season there and I'm ready to go. Whether he does get that chance remains to be seen. Look, they've got enough. They've got Kraft, they've got Byrne, they've got Lascelles, they've got Murphy. But I think you look at those four who are essentially going to be playing backup and you think, if injuries happen to Fabian Schär, if Lloyd Kelly picks up an early injury, do they have enough really to sustain a top four push before Botman comes back? I think they've got enough quantity-wise, but quality-wise, I'm not sure. But then the second point is what you've just mentioned. If they go out and spend 30, 40 million on a centre-back, a lot of people will say, well, look, that isn't a priority anymore. Why are you not spending that money on a centre-forward or a right midfielder or a left-back even, or, a really good first-choice goalkeeper? So it depends how much money.
Let me pose that question to you. If it was going to be another centre-back coming in who's going to cost you 30, 40 million, you assume would be guaranteed as best you can first-team football without actually saying it. Where do you take that money from in terms of position? Because we all know they want to go and send a right winger. They do need another attacker up front who's going to be versatile, but they do need another body there, potentially another body in midfield. Where do you take the money from?
I think it's third or fourth on the priority list at getting another centre-back. I think the priority has to be a right winger. You have to go out and get another centre-forward, especially if you lose Callum Wilson. And I think you would probably put a second choice goalkeeper in front of that.
So does that change? It's just solely because now you have to spend money on another centre back.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they hadn't got Lloyd Kelly, I think that priority would be much higher. But I think because they've got Kelly through the door, because, as you mentioned, they've got options in behind, I think it's definitely less of a priority. But I would still, in an ideal world, like them to go out and get another centre back. But
I do live in an ideal world.
Money is going to be tight, isn't it?
How important was it to get this one done early?
It was very important to get it done early, but I think, and it's something that I might have mentioned on the pod the last couple of weeks, I think it was really important to get it done because, one, they'd missed out on Toon, who I think a lot of people would have taken over Kelly if they had the choice of one or two. To miss out on him when you think that looked like it was done and over the line was a big blow. Then you've also got the fact that they've missed out on Dougie Freeman, who was their top choice in the sporting director. It was a bit of a negative start of the summer. Newcastle tried to move early for 3 big moves, 2 on the pitch, 1 off it. They hadn't succeeded with 2 of them. So I think it was important that they got it done. I think if we were sat here and Lloyd Kelly had ended up joining Villa or West Ham or Liverpool or Spurs, we would be sitting here going, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
Newcastle have went all out to try and get a couple of really good moves through the door early, and they've been left standing.
Well, Eddie Howe said as the signing was announced, I'm really pleased to have secured Lloyd's signature. He's a player who's proven himself at Premier League level. I'm certain he'll be a great addition as we prepare for the new season. Lloyd is a player I've admired since the early stages of his career. Alongside his undoubted defensive ability, he brings versatility and leadership qualities that I believe will make him a great fit within our squad and somebody our supporters will quickly take to. He has plenty of Premier League experience already under his belt, yet at Lloyd's age, he can still develop. He has a lot of potential, and I'm really looking forward to working with him again. A couple of things that stand out there. One, the leadership mentioned, because Newcastle, of course, have lost Paul Dummett and Matt Ritchie, so that old leadership group is slowly kind of getting dismantled. But also just the fact he mentions his versatility. I think that hints at what's to come in the transfer market as well. I think he will sign players across the field that are versatile. And look, I know I'm a big advocate for a number 6, solely a centre forward. But
you were the one last week saying if Lloyd Kelly's coming in, he's got to be a centre.
Well, no, I do still think you would set yourself up for a fall if he's first choice left backs at the start of the season. I think
Yeah,
he needs to come in and play at centre back. But the more I look at it, the more you read into things, the more you understand what Howe wants. Versatility is the bedrock of his teams. So he's mentioned it there. I mean, he's gone out of his way to mention Lloyd Kelly's versatility because he can play at left back as he can play at centre back. So that's key. And it does, I think, hint at what's to come in the summer.
Well, we've seen loads of examples of it even before this summer. We've obviously seen it now with Lloyd Kelly. We've seen it with Tino and Lewis Hall, who can both obviously play at either side and potentially midfield. Tino obviously played right wing as well at some points. Dan Burn, another example. But the key one, I think, is Anthony Gordon. And that is a player who, when he signed, had been playing on the left for Everton, up front for Newcastle. Howe's used him as a number 8, and he's played on the right. And I think we keep talking about how Newcastle want a right winger, but I think Eddie Howe will be looking for a player who can play on the right and on the left and through the middle. Because, as you say, it's a running theme through the players he's been signing.
In terms of the back line, how important is it that Eddie Howe has that versatility that Lloyd Kelly can bring? You mentioned there's like Dan Burn to turn to.
Oh, massive. Look, I mean, if we have another season like last season where every week another player's dropping out and, players are being shoehorned in, it's huge that you've got a player who's comfortable at both positions. And it also maybe, I mean, you might disagree, but does it lessen the need to get an out-and-out left-back in? You've now got Lewis Hall, who's came through. Lloyd Kelly, if he wants, can play there. Dan Burn has played there more often than not. I think now that drops down the list of where they need to spend because they've now got a couple of options. Might not be natural left backs, might not be first choice left backs, but Lloyd Kelly has played there before at Bournemouth and done a good job.
I think the issue with left back, I would be starting Lewis Hall from the word go. Yeah. Defensively, he does need to improve, but of course, he's just a young lad, and that's going to come over time. And the run towards the end last season will have helped him, undoubtedly. It's just whether he can continue to progress and have Newcastle United got someone to turn to. I mean, my target's still on the books, but I think he'll probably be gone if Newcastle can shift him out this summer. So that does leave a question. Do you gamble on Lewis Hall getting better and better and better? And look, sometimes I think Eddie Howe has been rather reluctant, not just with Hall, but with youngsters in general, to use them. We talked about Minter and what's going to happen with Lewis Miley next season. What happened with Lewis Hall at the beginning of this season? It looks like Eddie Howe was proved right with that one. But I do, just bearing in mind what happened at the beginning of the season with Lewis Hall, is Eddie Howe really going to play him from the word go? Do you think he's done enough to change Eddie Howe's mind?
Yeah, I think so, because look, he had a very good stint at the back end of last season where, even Eddie Howe, who's probably very stubborn about, betting these youngsters in, must have been impressed. Saying that, this is Eddie Howe, and I wouldn't be surprised on the first game of the season if Dan Burn has plonked at left back again.
Well, was Lewis Hall's run not sort of helped because Dan Burn was playing centre back? So, like, if everyone was fit, would Lewis Hall be at left back?
I think if we're sat here now, and I think if a lot of fans listening to this are sat here now, they say they want Lewis Hall in from the start. But, I always try and put myself in Eddie Howe's shoes and knowing how safe he is and how I don't think Lewis Hall will start. That's not to say
but who
shouldn't.
does? But who? Dan Burn?
I think
Lloyd Kelly?
Yeah, I think you could quite easily see it being Trips or Livramento at right back, Cher and Kelly at centre back.
How did Trips do though last night for England? I saw a lot of people not criticise him, but they weren't overly impressed. I thought he had an okay game.
I thought he played quite well. I thought he defended well. I was saying that you play right back, by the way.
Oh, right, Livramento.
No.
Oh, go on, sorry.
Trippier or Livramento starting right back.
Right.
I'm not sure who. Then I can easily see it being Fabian Cher and Lloyd Kelly at centre back and Dan Burn back out at the left. Now, I'm not saying that's the correct thing to do, but I can't sit here wholeheartedly and say, Eddie Howe's definitely going to start Lewis Hall, because there's a big chance that he won't.
I think you've got to go in. If that's the case, I think you have to go inside left back.
Yeah, but so do you think Lewis Hall's going to start at left back on the first game of the season? Bear in mind, this is Eddie Howe talking about.
No,
you can't be sure of it.
I don't.
And look, Lewis Hall had a fantastic end of the season. He looks like he's improved defensively, which is what Eddie Howe wanted from him. But you've got to remember he's only still very, very young.
Truel says if Hall keeps his position at left back and Kelly goes into left centre back, then great. If Kelly gets left back, then not so great. Hall was brilliant in the last 5 to 10 games, and fingers crossed that he does get the chance from the start of the season and he can build on that. But definitely defensively, he does need to improve. I just want to talk about the relationship that Lloyd Kelly has with Eddie Howe, because I think that is key. Now, they only worked together for a season, as we've mentioned. Lloyd Kelly missed a boatload of games in that season. But it is key, isn't it? Because Eddie Howe likes players that he knows. He likes to sign players that he knows. Oh, on Kelly, first off, how important is that relationship with Howe, do you think?
Oh, massive. And I think that will have gone a long way into selling the club to him, because it's a manager that he knows, and he clearly enjoyed working with you. And you had to listen to that first interview he gave where he spoke very highly of Eddie Howe. Also, I think it's very important that he's got players that he's played with. Again, he spoke about talking to Callum Wilson before he came. He spoke about talking to Harvey Barnes, who played at England under 21 with him. He's got, players and a manager that trust him and like him and, get on with him. And I think that'll go a massive way to helping him settle in, because, he's played at Bristol. He's from down south. He's then had 6 years at Bournemouth. Be a big culture shock coming up here. And the fact that he's got players and a manager that he knows will definitely help him ease into life at Newcastle.
But some do criticise Eddie Howe for being too loyal. Is signing another person that he knows really, really well going to fall into that bracket? You think that's a bit unfair?
No, I think it's a bit unfair. I think if Lloyd Kelly's good enough to play for Newcastle, I don't think it matters. I think if anything, it's a positive, not a negative, that Eddie Howe is going after players that he clearly likes. I mean, when Lloyd Kelly signed from Bristol, I think he cost 13 million, which was a lot of money for a player who was still, 20 years old? Big leap of faith. And, I know they only had one season together, but there was clearly a relationship on that part and a mutual respect. Eddie Howe clearly really, really rates him, and Kelly obviously liked working with him. So I can see it as only a positive rather than negative. But I get, the stereotype of how, as we mentioned earlier, has tried to sign a lot of players that he's already worked with. So I understand where that sort of jibe comes from.
I think it's a positive, especially on the character. We know how important that is at Newcastle United, within the dressing room, everyone pulling in the same direction, no egos and what have you. So obviously Howe knows Kelly's character, and I think that's a really good sign that he's gone from and brought him to Tyneside.
And also, just if anybody hasn't listened or watched the first interview that Kelly gave, I think it's about 10 minutes long on the Newcastle website, and he speaks very, very well. He speaks very maturely. He's seems like a very calm figure. I think it'll be a very, very good signing for Newcastle.
We will be talking to a Bournemouth podcaster later this week to get an introduction to Lloyd Kelly, and already I can tell you that they are, as Aaron said, gutted to lose him. I think not just because of the kind of player he is and the talent, but also to lose him on a free, because it wasn't that long ago he was being linked to a big money move to Manchester United or Tottenham. So they've missed out on, you would argue, 30-40 million if he was under contract.
Yeah, well, it was only last summer that Tottenham were really pushing to sign him, and Bournemouth managed to persuade him to stay for one more season. I think they just sort of said, look, we'd rather have him for another year than cash in, and maybe they will hope that they could keep him, but it's Newcastle's game that they haven't.
Right, let's talk about who's next. James Trafford, first and foremost, very briefly on him. It looks like Burnley are haggling for a bit more money because there's a sell-on clause, which means Man City will be owed some money, but we expect that to get sorted pretty quickly and him to be a Newcastle United player within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to probably end up costing Newcastle about 20 million to sign him. Some will say that's a lot of money. Others will probably say that, for a 21-year-old who has experience with England and, looks like he could have a very bright future, then that's probably a fair value. I think it probably is in this day and age. And I think we spoke about it a couple of weeks ago, going out and signing Aaron Ramsdale is probably going to cost you the best part of 30-35 million. There's that age-old debate as to whether he actually comes in above Nick Pope or whether he doesn't. I think with James Trafford, we're pretty sure that he comes in as a nice understudy for Pope. Pope probably sees out another season or two as the number one. And then you've got James Trafford, who's ready to come in. Now, what I would say is I know there's a little bit of negativity around the deal. A lot of it is because he's been relegated. A lot of it is because he had, quite a poor season with Burnley. But what I would just say is, very, very good for England. Manchester City really rated him and didn't actually want to cash in on him. And he was thrown in at the deep end. First season as an out-and-out number one in the Premier League with Burnley, who probably faced more shots than anyone in the league this season, maybe only less than Manchester United. It was a big ask for him, and yes, he got dropped in March, but give him a chance. I think it's another positive signing.
Yeah, and the usual questions about it, negativity about it, especially because he has been relegated and he was dropped by Burnley, of course, is there. But again, we just go back to what we always say, isn't it? That you just trust that the transfer team and Eddie Howe know what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, how many times have this transfer team put their foot wrong? Not really. And I think, again, it might be another transfer that comes in and it's shrouded in skepticism and a little bit of doubt. But I think in the end it'll come good. You've only got to look at the likes of Anthony Gordon, young players that have signed with a little bit of a cloud over them. A couple of months for Eddie Howe on their right.
And he seems very keen on the move to Newcastle United. So hopefully that one gets sorted sooner rather than later. Let's talk about Michael Olise then, the Crystal Palace star, 22 years of age, and it broke over the weekend that Newcastle United had made contact with Michael Olise. Broke on kind of Wednesday, Thursday, didn't it? All the days rolling into one. We spoke about Olise last Monday, and I was just like, not a realistic target. And if I'm honest, nothing's really changed for me. It's an exciting link, and it's great to see Newcastle United breaking early and trying to get something done here. But when you look at all the elements of play, the fact that the 60 million being talked about reportedly only applies to Champions League clubs, so Newcastle and Chelsea, of course, fall out of that bracket. So Crystal Palace, like Newcastle will with Bruno in a couple of weeks' time, will be able to demand exactly what they want. You would say Palace will probably ask for closer to £100 million, which is going to take away the chunk of Newcastle United's budget. As great as a player as he is, I just cannot see them spending north of 80 million on a single player when there's so many other positions they need to strengthen.
I don't think they've got the funds, quite frankly, to I think they've probably got that funds for the entire window. I don't think, as you say, one player it'll get spent on that. Let's focus on the positives that you started with. The fact that Newcastle are even being talked about, a player of this or a signing of this magnitude, is huge. I think there's been nobody. Yes, we've spoken about all the doubts about Kelly and about Trafford. I don't think there'd be any fans that were disappointed with Michael Olise coming in. Now, just to flip that, as you say, the clubs that are also interested, the likes of Bayern Munich, Manchester City, Manchester United, Chelsea, have all got a big advantage over Newcastle in the sense that they're obviously playing European football. They can probably offer them more money. Chelsea agreed personal terms with them last summer before the deal collapsed. Bayern offers a very exciting new challenge abroad. There's a lot of negatives facing Newcastle, but I think, and I also agree with you, I don't think much has changed. I'd be very surprised if they do get him, but boy, if they did, what a statement it would be.
It would be some coup, and just some dude watching live on YouTube says it would be incredible, but I'm not allowing myself to get too excited. And I think that's the message that we would convey, that just keep your feet on the ground, because it would be some move for this. I mean, Chelsea are in a position where they could offer, say, £60 million, then a couple of players to chuck in, whereas Newcastle really haven't got too many players, if any at all, that you could see going in on a swap deal. I mean,
not think Almiron would look good in the Crystal Palace colours.
I don't know. No, I don't think so. I think they would rather go for someone like Noni Madueke or Trevor Chalobah as a well, obviously not Chalobah wouldn't be a direct replacement, but as a player going in, couldn't see Miggy being a swap. I think Newcastle would try and get as much money for him as possible. But
would you think Minter would be a real?
What are you doing?
No. So you're saying, mate, let me just put a hypothetical to you. Newcastle say to Palace, we'll give you 60 million and Minter. Really saying?
Do you think they would accept that? Me personally, okay, you do that.
You would do it.
You do that deal. But I just don't see that happening. I don't
think you would do that deal.
I think one thing it has done, it's boosted Newcastle United fans. And you spoke right at the start of the show about the importance of getting Kelly in early and what that does for the spirit, because I do think missing out on Europe, the constant worry about Bruno Guimaraes, Alexander Isak, I think there was a boost needed like this to see the club being ambitious, to see the club, you're right, to see the club continue the level of ambition that we've seen previously. It does, it just picks everybody up after what was a kind of a disappointing end of the season.
Well, look, even I think we've already had it off some fans in the comments, and we've both said it. We don't think Newcastle United are going to sign Michael Olise. It's a long shot that they get a player like Michael Olise, but just the fact they're being talked about in the race for one of these players, the fact that they're showing the ambition to actually initiate talks with one of these players to try and chance their luck, chance their arm at getting someone like that through the door, it's a huge boost. And as you say, fans maybe need a little pick-me-up after the start of the summer, and that provided it, even if they don't get him through the door. Can you imagine the scenes if they actually sign him?
It'd be special, wouldn't you? You could probably open the Leazers end like they did for Michael Owen arriving and make a day of it. My concern is, and once again, I get that Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it these days, is not the tool to measure the true reaction by. But imagine if they went from Michael Olise down to, well, I say imagine like it's a negative, but Brian Mbeumo came in, or Anthony Alanga that I mentioned every week, and again I get stick for it. I'm not too disappointed at that. I think 2 quality players there, but I do think there'll be quite a few Newcastle fans who go, well, with it, you've aimed for Michael Olise, who's top of the tree.
Really?
And look what yeah.
You think people are really going to say that if
I
they
think
go out
so.
and sign someone like Neto and Bremo or Alanga? No, I don't.
I think there are quite a few, with all due respect to Newcastle United fans, and I'm one of them. We're one of them. You are one of them. I think there's quite a few fans who've got massive expectations of where Newcastle United can name, and they look down. You spoke about it there about Trafford, because he got relegated, and a lot of people will see. And I mean, the end segment that we're going to come up with in a moment, championship players they could talk. That'll not go down well with some Newcastle United fans. But there are talented players who have been relegated. There are talented players in the Championship. There are talented players at the bottom end of the Premier League who can add to a squad going after the top 4, without a doubt.
I agree, but I don't know if I agree with that. I don't think you'll get too many fans that'll grumble if Newcastle go out and sign someone that's maybe a little bit less quality than Olise, because I think a lot of fans know, yes, they got excited about that link last week and the potential of Olise coming, but I don't think any of them really in their heart of hearts are looking at that and seeing Bayern and City and United and Chelsea linked and thinking, oh, we've got a really good shot here.
But it is different, isn't it? This Olise interest to back in the day, Newcastle United Wayne Rooney, Newcastle United Ronaldinho, Newcastle United David Beckham. It's different.
Sounds like our best 11 we did there a couple of months ago.
Back then, it was often more paper talk than it was substance. This time around, Newcastle United are in, and they want him.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big statement of intent, and even if they don't get him, even if they know they're not going to get him, even if Darren Eales and Andy Howe and everybody in the back room know they're not going to get Michael Olise, it's great PR that they've even tried to get him. And you never know, Michael Olise, they can sell him. Look what we did, Anthony Gordon, who was at a similar level to yourself in terms of where he was in the Premier League. Yes, he had offers elsewhere from Chelsea, but he came here. He was the star man. You go to Bayern or City or Manchester United, you're not going to get as much game time. There's positives for Newcastle to sell. And I don't want to, I don't want to say it's impossible. We know it's very unlikely that they're going to beat all these teams. But they've got a lot of things going for them, even without Europe, and even though they're up against some really top teams.
Gary says, I think the club will have every eventuality covered. Wouldn't surprise me if Olise is a smokescreen.
Done it before.
Who would be the man behind the mirror?
Look, I think we've mentioned a few. I think Brian Bremo, who's openly came out and said he wants to leave Brentford. I think we would both be in agreement that he would be a very good signing. He, as well, as we touched on earlier, a bit like Gordon, can play through the middle. It's what Howe wants, that versatility. Some people will champion Neto. I'm a bit concerned about his hamstrings. Jared Bowen would be huge, but I think that again falls into the Olise category of being very, very unlikely. There's plenty of options. There's loads of options, and I think Madueke from Chelsea, another good option. Diallo from Manchester United, just to rattle the Sunderland fans. Alanga, Hudson-Odoi. There's a lot of talented wingers that you think would improve this Newcastle team.
Now, Les says the fact that they have 60 million to open talks is a good sign. Gary makes the point that we bought Nick Pope from relegated Burnley. Niall says if Trafford was so good, the top teams would all be in for him. That says it all. Agree?
But no, that goes again back to the negativity, doesn't it? Of look, he's had a bad season and he's been relegated. I think Newcastle are getting a good deal if they can get him in for 20 million.
He also asks now about Ferran Torres, who's been linked over the last week or so. Shake of the head.
Yeah, not going to happen. I think it would be a fantastic move. I think it would be an ideal signing. But I think you've got Barcelona, who paid 55 million euros, 46 million pound from 2 years ago. They're still paying a chunk of that off. I saw some links in the Spanish press last week that Newcastle had offered 20 million. Not going to happen. He doesn't want to leave Barcelona. But a signing like that would be fantastic. And I don't disagree with Niall in the sense that he'd be good. I just don't think it's too realistic.
Good instinct, Olise in black and white?
No. But I hope he is.
Keep everything crossed. Right. To finish off the show, we're going to look at some championship players who Newcastle United could buy this summer to help build their squad ahead of next season. Me now have picked 3 each. Before we get into that, if you want to throw any names at us, if you're watching live, please do so. If you've got any questions about the transfer window, Newcastle United, whatever, pop them in the comments as well, and we'll answer the best of them. Should I deal you my first choice?
You go
I actually
first.
think this chap is my first choice.
Okay. I don't think I've put mine in order. I've just got 3. So
I'm just letting you know that this is my first choice, and it's Archie Gray.
Good shout.
18 years of age, 52 appearances in all competitions, can play as a centre midfielder and a right back. Football runs through his family, of course. Eddie Gray, Leeds legend, is his great uncle. Absolutely fantastic player. Okay, just broken through. There would be questions over whether he can handle it in the Premier League. It's a big step up. He's also been linked to Bayern Munich, but he looked so good last season in a team that really should have gone up. Obviously, always room to improve at such a young age, but he really could be a Premier League star. And with Leeds in the Championship, you're wondering, could you knock on the door and just tempt them?
Yeah, it would be a fantastic signing. As you say, a lot of teams seem to be interested in him, but I haven't really seen him put a foot wrong. Looked very, very good for England under 21s a couple of weeks ago. Looks like he's destined for a big, big future. How much do you reckon it would take this summer to get him away from Leeds? Bear in mind they haven't came up.
That's the big question. I imagine they will have to sell
because I haven't seen any fees dotted around. I would literally just be plucking something out. So I don't know if you've.
No, I've not seen any fees. I did have a little look. I didn't.
Be a lot of money though.
It would be. You know, I imagine there'd be a lot of clauses. He's 18. But I think they are going to have to sell. Yeah. So obviously Somerville's been linked with the move away.
Well,
go on.
On that note, I've got him second on my list, but I'll go for it now because you've done a Leeds player. I picked a Leeds player. I've gone for Somerville. Probably cost you what, 35 million? He can play, well, he plays on the left for Leeds, but he can also play on the right. Championship player of the year, very, very good record. He's the one player on that Leeds team. Gray looks fantastic, but I think Somerville is the one player that looks like he's already ready for the Premier League. Don't think it would be a case of signing him like Trafford and waiting for him to grow. I think he would be knocking on that door straight away. A little bit under realistic, maybe, because you've got Liverpool and Bayern, and I think Brighton have just literally this morning put a bid in for him. So it would be a big ask, but I think he would be my one from Leeds. I would
Newcastle could persuade him to join them instead of Brighton, right?
Yeah, 100%, definitely.
Would it become a little bit, what's the word? A little bit oversubscribed on the left flank?
Yeah, potentially, but you know, would Howe and the transfer team potentially look at it and say, look, if we can get Somerville in for 35, then we don't need to go out and sign a right winger because we've got Somerville can play there. Gordon can play there. Maybe Barnes could potentially have a stint out there if he wanted. So would it take the need away to get a right winger? I don't know. Look, I'm not saying Newcastle are going to sign him. They haven't even been linked with him. But if I talked about Championship players that I would like to sign, then I would love to see him at Newcastle.
Okay. My second pick is Alfie Doughty. Played 37 times in the Premier League last season. Played down the left, 8 assists, 2 goals, 26 years of age. Interestingly, his contract status is unknown because Luton do their best not to release their details, because I've gone and researched it and I thought, oh, there.
When's he out of contract?
It was just a dot against his name on Transfermarkt, and I've dived a little bit deeper, and it turns out they don't like to release.
Interesting.
And they managed to keep everything quiet.
Smart, to be fair. It's very smart, isn't it?
It's very well done. 26 years of age. Look, he's not going to be a first choice arrival, but given, as we've spoken about, that versatility,
is he a fullback?
Yeah, I think he played the majority at left wing, but he can't play at left back. He took to the Premier League like he took to water. He would be a very good squad addition and would offer competition at left back. You know, he could offer competition to Harvey Barnes, Anthony Gordon. Would he get ahead of them? Not really a chance, but he would still push them. And I think when you talk about building a squad, it's these sort of players who don't cost you the earth, but who can put in a decent shift in the Premier League, who for now can help Newcastle United get to that next level.
Yeah, look, I think he was one of the standouts for Luton last season, wasn't he? Him, Adebayo and Ross Barkley were probably the 3 that stood out more than anyone else. Yeah, decent.
Wouldn't cost you that much.
Yeah, it wouldn't cost you that much.
You always turn your nose at when I mention him.
Yeah, because I just don't know. I think you look at his assists, and yeah, fair play, he got 8 or 9 assists in the Prem, and everyone was raving over him.
Weren't you celebrating the other week about Kieran Trippier getting 10?
No, not really. I don't think I was.
You're not one of those?
You're probably confusing us with Gibbo or something. Look, yeah, I wouldn't say no to him. I wouldn't be equally too excited. I think he's just a decent option. But you've gone for one Leeds. I've gone for one Leeds. You've gone for a Luton, and so have I. But I've gone for the obvious. And it's Ross Barkley.
Isn't he off to Villa?
No.
No?
Well, he might be, but he's not yet. And until he's at Villa Park holding up that claret and blue scarf in front of the
I'm sick of Villa.
what's that big end
Holt
called?
End.
In front of the Holt End, then there's still a chance for Newcastle. I would take Ross Barkley in a heartbeat. And he was so good last season. He's had such a redemption arc.
As a starting member of Newcastle?
No, just as a very good squad player at Newcastle.
You think you could sell that to him?
Yeah, 100%. He's currently playing, well, he's about to play Championship football. Does he walk into Villa's team? Well, saying that, he might if Douglas Luiz ends up going. But I think they might be getting Weston McKennie, mightn't they, from Juve as part of the deal.
But he didn't exactly set the world alight for Leeds, did he?
Yeah, he got a bit of stick, didn't he, at Leeds? They've also got, obviously, John McGinn. I'm trying to think who else they've got in the middle of the park.
Ramsey coming back.
Ramsey back. I've got Kamara as well, maybe.
Yeah.
Look, is he going to walk into Villa's team? I don't know. Are Newcastle going to sign him? Probably not. But if we're picking the 3 players we want from the Championship, he is second on my list.
I think maybe you're just on a high is the wrong term of phrase, but just remembering those 2 performances he put in against Newcastle United.
He was so good last season.
He was, but also Newcastle United didn't half make him look like Peter Bates / Lionel Messi with the way they just let him run at them. I mean, they were 2 of Newcastle's worst performances, and they just said, here you go, Ross, take the ball. Just went towards the goal.
I think he had a very good season. He can play anywhere across the midfield. He's got Prem experience. Good signing for whoever gets him. And look, it looks like it's going to be Villa, but I think it's a good option.
Wilson Odobert is my 3rd choice.
Okay.
From Burnley, 19 years of age, made 33 appearances last season. He's a man who plays on the left primarily, but can play up top and can play on the right wing and fits that versatility definition. Raw talent, only signed last season, so I think he's on a 5-year deal, so he won't be cheap, but he just looks like such an exciting talent. Vincent Kompany, of course, manager Bayern Munich now, but was manager at Burnley last season.
How is he pulling that off, by the way?
Unbelievable. There's hope for us all. He said, I will almost refrain from what I really think about him because at this moment in time, I don't think people realize how good he is. He's still playing in a team that is playing for survival, but things he's able to do, whether it's defending or whether it's attacking. Like I said, I will refrain from what I really think because I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to create a situation where the expectations become too big for him too soon. Well, Vincent, mate, you've already done it. Get that man in black and white. From what I saw, I remember when he played up here, and I'm pretty sure he came off the bench with like 20 minutes to go, and it was really the only kind of bright spot that Burnley kind of had. He just looks like a real talent. Because you could sign him, and you could send him on loan for a season and bring him back.
Only 19, not a bad shout.
Because he's going to get ahead of, Gordon Barnes and Alfie Doughty. No, but plan for the future. Get him on board. Say Burnley, have him for a season. We'll take him back next season. Honestly,
not a bad shout.
From what I've seen of him, he just
for you. That's a very good shout.
What do you mean for me? Oh, you're just winding us up. Okay.
Well, so you went for a Leeds player, and I went for a Leeds player. Then you went for a Luton player, and I went for a Luton player. And I haven't gone for a Burnley player, but I have followed a very similar pattern in the sense that I've gone for a winger who was fighting for survival, but he was fighting for survival at Plymouth Argyle. And if you are playing for Plymouth Argyle, who finished 21st in the Championship last season, and you scored 19 goals and got 8 assists and finished in the Championship team of the season, then you're good enough for me. And that is Morgan Whittaker. He is only going to be about 10 million, apparently. That's good enough for a club like Plymouth. Lazio tried to sign him in January, but he stayed. Rooney faces a very, very tough task at keeping him at Plymouth.
How's he got that job?
I know. Yeah, very true. Look, is he the brand spanking new right winger that everybody wants? Probably not, but I think at that age, 23, 10 million, very, very good season. I think he'll have a lot of suitors this summer, and I think he could be one to watch.
It's always interesting when I look at players like this, and like you say, he's very young, so he's not played too many seasons in the Championship. But I'm always really intrigued to see what they did beforehand. Now he got 19 goals in the Championship last season, but before that he was on loan in the League One. He only managed 9. He was on loan the season before that, only managed 5. He's not someone who's done it.
You've got to remember he was only 20.
No, I know that, but I'm always just intrigued. Look back, you've got the chap at Blackburn who looks like he's going to Everton.
Sammy Schmuricks.
First time I think he's got in double figures, and yet he's probably going to cost Everton the best part of 25 million, something like that. So it's always really interesting,
to see whether they're a flash in the pan.
Because you can buy some from the Championship, which I'm a big advocate of, but it is always a gamble. And
But look, he might be a flash in the pan and it might be a gamble, but for 10 million, would you not want to take that gamble and see?
I've not seen too much of him, but from what I've heard people talk about and what I've
He
read,
looks very, very good, to be fair. And I think he will get a Prem move this summer. I don't think it'll be Newcastle. But I don't think he'll stay at Plymouth. But I think he looked very, very good last season.
well, I guess the one brilliant example of taking that gamble is the chap who moved from Middlesbrough to Aston Villa. Do you know his name off the top of your head?
I know exactly who you mean. But
Go on. Is he called Morgan as well? Maybe?
Yeah.
But that he's the prime example of just taking that gamble. Of course, you know, they do their
Morgan
work.
in it.
Yeah,
Morgan Rogers. Yeah, that's it.
£8 million fee could be worth up to 16 million. That was back in February.
Yeah, and he looks like he's
impressed towards them last season. So it is about taking that gamble, doing your homework, and maybe Whittaker could be the man to surprise quite a few people. A lot of people in the comments talking about Leif Davies.
Yeah.
Of course, Geordie's already said you can't wait to play at St James's Park, but he's obviously now in the Premier League with
player now.
Ipswich. Looks a very, very decent left back, but I can't see him leaving Ipswich. Not until at least January, maybe, when things are really going badly for them. I think he'll want to have that opportunity for first team football for the first 6 months.
If Ipswich hadn't came up, I think that looked like a deal that could definitely happen. As you say, you know, he's already expressed his love for Newcastle. Yeah, interesting to see how he does. Interesting to see how Kieran McKenna and Ipswich do in general, because it'll be a big step up for them. But he looks good, Leif Davis. But I think Ipswich system, if I'm not wrong, they play back 3 or back 5 sometimes. Will that count against him, given that Howe doesn't? I don't know. But yeah, look, interesting to see how he gets on in the Prem.
England beat Serbia 1-0 last night. You were adamant it was coming home a couple of weeks ago. What part of the journey is the trophy currently on?
I'm not sure if it's coming home at all, if I'm honest.
Game was crying out for Anthony Gordon.
Yeah, well, I know it really was, and I'm not just saying that from a Newcastle point of view. I didn't think Phil Foden had a very good game at all. So yeah, not ideal. Would have been good to see Gordon out on the left for at least the last part of the game. So a lot of fans calling for him to come on over Jared Bowen. Yeah, look, it wasn't a vintage England display. You've got to hope that they build on that. But yeah, it was a tough watching that second half, wasn't it?
It certainly was. But enjoying the Euros so far?
Yeah, look, my missus isn't, because every time she walks in the living room, I've either got the 2 p.m., the 5 p.m., or the 8 p.m. game on. But yeah, I am enjoying it. And even though England were a bit poor last night, I'm very much enjoying football being back on the screen.
Bellingham is just different class, isn't
Yeah, he's very, very
good. Exciting to watch. I just want to finish off on a man who's consistently been linked to Newcastle ever since the takeover, and that is Federico Chiesa from Juventus. 26-year-old, played for Italy in their game over, who was it against? Remind me.
Albania.
There we go. I mean, he's always linked.
Yeah.
Is it ever been a realistic target?
Look, I think there was definitely interest last summer when it looked like he was really set to leave Juventus. But I think on the whole, he's one of those players, as you've just said, that it's just constantly linked to Newcastle. And I think there's a lot of agent talk trying to push his name out there. I tell you what, if there's any truth to it, I would absolutely love to sign him because I think he's brilliant. But I think, like a lot of the players we mentioned today, there'll be a lot of competition for his signature.
Maybe one to watch then. And we will finish off on some big news, ladies and gentlemen, because he's worried now. Aaron Stokes is returning to Monday Night Football this evening. We were desperate to get a 16th man across the line, and Aaron swooped in at the last minute. Although I've come into the office today, and he looks like he's regretting his decision before ball's even being kicked.
It's those pesky hamstrings I've been telling you. Look, we'll get back out there. We'll see what it's like, and at least the viewers and the listeners will be pleased to know that we'll have something else to talk about next week rather than part one, because it'll be letting them know whether my hamstrings held at the football or not.
Well, I'm not here next week. I'm going to go on my jollies. A nice little break, but we will have
much deserved break.
Thank you very much. We will have a special recorded. So we've got a few ideas in the bag. It'll be a little bit like the one we did, which seems a lifetime ago, but we really enjoyed it, which was creating the best 11 from transfer rumors from the past. We'll be doing another one similar to that. So watch out for that on Monday coming, and we'll have a host of podcasts all this week. As I said, that special with a Bournemouth fan coming up. Gibbo will be back, and me and Sam will be back, and there'll be plenty of other content as well coming to you. Thank you very much, as always, for tuning in. Head over to chroniclelive.co.uk for all the latest Newcastle United news, including a daily transfer blog. And for myself and Aaron, we'll see you guys live in a couple of weeks.